We are SatVu.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Generation Space podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome Anthony Baker. Anthony is CEO of SatVu, an Earth observation company specialising in providing actionable insights from satellites to address global challenges, such as climate change, by detecting where we are wasting energy. This data also brings insights to business, allowing them to make better commercial decisions. He has over 20 years' experience in innovating satellite companies with roles in both commercial and government organisations. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Leah. How are you doing? Good to speak to you again.
Thanks for coming on again. And I'm also pleased to welcome back to the podcast CEO of SatVu Space, James Brugger, who you already know is a specialist space tech investor and works closely with SatVu. Hi, James.
Hi, Leah. Great to be back. Looking forward to today's chat.
Thanks for joining me again. So I'll get straight to the questions. Anthony, I think everyone's really excited to find out. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got into space.
I've been in space over 25 years. Started off in university, master's in satcoms, but had a very interesting career around the world. So I was working in Hong Kong on satellite TV with a scale-up company, New Skies, which was a startup in the Netherlands. We were connecting the world with communications. But most recently, I was the first CEO in Qatar, where we were again working on TV. And that was the transition into Earth observation and looking at what you could glean from space about man's impact on Earth.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. And what about SatVu itself? How did that all begin?
So really, back in Qatar, we were looking at what we could do with Earth observation satellites to look at pollution near the sea, supply chain issues, defense and intelligence. And what a small nation needs is eyes over the border. And the issue was that you're very constrained by drones and planes and only seeing your territory. And you wanted to look a little bit further into the, quite a volatile region there. That was certainly the government and the sponsors' interest. My personal interest, turned out there was plastic in the ocean was a very big thing, a nascent challenge. And why couldn't you spot that from space? And I really have really immaculate detail on where the plastic was coming from and where it was going to, and try and sort that out.
What about SatVu's mission today? Because it's geothermal imaging. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we're on a mission to capture the highest resolution thermal data from space for a safer and more sustainable Earth. So high resolution insights and data from space, we'll be able to gather those in a uniform way that empowers things like climate change, and we'll be able to give unique intelligence on industrial activity. We'll be able to see what's working and what's not based on what's hot and what's cold. In fact, our first satellite is going to be launched in just a few weeks in early June. And so watch this space for the exact date.
Exciting stuff. Thank you. James, I'll go to you. Where did Seraphim first come across SatVu?
Well, actually, the story there predates us ever having met Anthony, funnily enough. In one of our previous funds, one of the investors was a company called SSTL, which stands for Surrey Satellite Technologies, which is a subsidiary now of Airbus, but was one of the very first pioneers in manufacturing satellites out of commercial off-the-shelf componentry. Interestingly enough, SSTL was one of the first companies that Elon Musk went to when he decided to focus on space. He was previously an investor in the company. Anyway, the reason I'm starting there is through our relationship with SSTL, we had an advisory board where senior executives from our investors like SSTL would participate and talk about all the interesting things they were seeing and doing. And it was in that context that they told us about this exciting new infrared satellite design that they were developing, which piqued our interest, especially so when about 6 months later, Anthony came knocking on our door and said, I've got this fantastic idea for this high-resolution infrared satellite. And we immediately joined the dots on that, given his connections to SSTL. And so we were able to really sort of fast track to a point of getting quite excited.
Amazing. Thank you, James. Anthony, can you give us an understanding of the scale of your organization today? As you said, you're just about to launch some satellites, so you're pretty far along. But how many employees have you got? Where are your offices? And how much funding have you raised to date?
Yeah, so we're about 40 employees, and one satellite that's been constructed has been shipped and is sent over to SpaceX, and today it's getting bolted to the rocket. So super exciting stuff. We have just moved offices to County Hall, which is that huge building opposite Big Ben, and it's been derelict for sort of 30 odd years. And then a company has taken a lease of the fifth floor called Sustainable Workspaces. And literally, they've renovated it in a most sustainable way and filled it full of climate impact companies, including ourselves. So it's a great environment in a great old building, which has been renovated in a fantastically eco-centric way. So we're really happy to be there. On fundraising, I would have told you last week that we would raise 20 million in up to our Series A, including some grant funding. That's 20 million pounds. But I can tell you, most recently we've closed a round of another 13.5 million from mainly internal investors. So they've been super supportive. So yeah, we've got a great long runway, and we're looking forward to launching our first satellite and making plans for the subsequent ones.
Exciting times. Thank you, Anthony. You mentioned climate impact earlier, but what is SatVu doing that's so important, and how does it help support the new space economy?
So we started with an ambition to fill a void in the phenomenologies that collect data from space, so imagery from space. So high resolution thermal was really not being used. So this is a brand new category. You don't see it on Google Earth or anything like that. It's brand new. And the unique thing about infrared is it turns nighttime into day. So all those Google Earth images you see, we can now provide similar things, but at nighttime. So it opens up the other half of the day. Also, from the heat signatures of buildings and factories and pollution, we can see what's on and what's off, what's clear water, what's not, what factories are operating. So you've got these two massive insights that you open up the other half of the day, and then you see on any particular structure the heat emissions, which are an indication of economic activity. And activity, where there's activity, there's quite often pollution or carbon footprint. And so there you get the connection to climate. So we wanted to create a high-growth space company that's poised to help the globe address sustainable challenges through this high-resolution imagery. We're on a quest to ensure that all buildings and structures on the planet can operate in an energy-efficient way, and so that people can make better business decisions about their carbon footprint. The other unique part is, and I think a number of constellations are looking at this, is to have that real-time effect. So if you want to look at the pattern of life, the shifts, how things change during the day or through the seasons, you need multiple revisits. This will be another unique feature of our thermal infrared, and to have that data delivered almost in a real-time effect. So if you're interested in fires, wildfires starting, or when's that ship going to sail, you need that constant and very quick reporting timescale. And so our satellites will start to include these features as well.
James, I'll go to you. What makes SatVu stand out from an investor perspective? And we haven't touched upon the fact that they went through our accelerator.
Indeed. So what stood out? So I've already talked about the fact that we were aware of SatVu before SatVu even existed, through our relationship with SSTL, who are designing and manufacturing their satellites. So what led to us inviting Anthony to come and participate on our accelerator, and ultimately us leading their seed round of investment? Well, one of the things that we do at Seraphim is routinely we look at different parts of the ecosystem, and we look to map out all of the companies that have approached us for funding we're aware about, to try and draw some conclusions. So we'd actually done that exercise looking at all of the constellations, all of the people who want to put satellites up into orbit. There was more than several hundred of those. And one of the key things that we realized when we went through this exercise was that infrared was a really underdeveloped category of the market. So many other parts of the Earth observation market, you've got dozens of companies who either already have satellites in orbit capturing a particular type of data or have plans to do so. Contrast that with infrared, where there's barely half a dozen companies that are endeavoring to launch constellations. And at the point that we did this analysis, none of them had put anything into orbit. So that looked interesting to us. Here's a really underdeveloped category of intuitively really, really valuable data. So then the question for us is, which is the right company to back? Why did we ultimately decide on SatVu? Well, anyone who's putting up a constellation, the key question we ask them is, what is it that you've optimized for? What have you had to compromise on when it comes to design? And different companies do different things. There are other infrared constellations that have optimized for how broad an area they can capture information on, things to do with sort of environmental monitoring and agriculture. Whereas contrastingly, what was really distinct about SatVu is the thing that they had optimized for was resolution and revisit. So why is that important? Because fundamentally, I think our view is within Earth observation that it's that combination of resolution, so how high fidelity a picture can you get of the Earth, how small an object can you see, and revisit, how frequently can you actually capture information, that ultimately leads to unlocking the greatest amount of value. So when we saw SatVu with an ability to image at just 2 or 3 meters per pixel, and with a very modest number of satellites, potentially be able to capture information on any point of interest 10 or 20 times a day, that really, really resonated with us as having the right formula for ultimately unlocking the potential of infrared, both within defense and intelligence, and as Anthony's been saying, very importantly, this becoming a foundational data set for helping in the world's drive towards net zero.
Thanks, James. You both touched on it slightly, but can you tell us a little bit more about the size of the market, Anthony? What is the size of the addressable market at the moment?
So there's 2 parts. One is the existing uses of imagery, and then there's the derived products on insights, which we're trying to focus on climate. The former, there's plenty of intelligence. There's lots of analogies with different phenomenologies. And so you can see that the total addressable market for Earth observation is somewhere around the $6 billion mark. We believe that for climate, it's probably around the same. So we've been testing that thesis. So the addressable market is huge. And the way we've been looking at this is with our early access program. So going to customers that are existing buyers of data, particularly starting with satellite companies, and finding out how much data they would buy from us. Quite typically, it's for the other half of the day. The nighttime vision is very obvious. If they've got a daytime business, how does nighttime work? So we have a lot of confidence in those numbers. Then in economic activity, there's a lot of commodity brokers and people interested in industrial activity, and they collect the data maybe some other ways or proxies to that. So we've got a very sure statistics around how much we think that market's going to be. On the climate side, there is more and more interest, and the climate problem is trillions of dollars are going to be spent. On the data side, you've got some, the S&Ps and there's other companies looking at net zero, and the amount of money people are putting into net zero to achieve net zero. So you've got some big market sizes there, but how is our data relevant? And so we're working with those companies as well to make sure we define the market size appropriately. So in summary, there's a huge market of existing users who know the data set and going to be the immediate buyers of this data. And a lot of that's in defense intelligence and industrial monitoring. And then secondly, there's an even larger market looking at climate applications, and that's where we're directing the company.
Brilliant, thank you. What about competitors? James, you touched a little bit on competitors earlier, but Anthony, who are the competitors at the moment to SatVu?
So in high resolution infrared at multiple revisits, there isn't really a competitive technology. If you have lots of money and it's a local problem, you can use drones or planes. But if you want a global uniform data set, you need to use satellites. So at the high resolution, there isn't anyone who's near to market. But as James is absolutely right, there are other applications. If you're interested in agriculture or large features or land masses, then there are smaller form satellites which are being launched, and they're starting off at sort of 100-meter resolution with aspirations to sort of get down to 30 meters, whereas we're at 3.5-meter resolution, really looking at mankind's impact on the planet. It's a completely different category of market.
Amazing. James, what do you think makes Satellite View stand out? What gives them the edge to win in this space?
I think a combination of things, some of which Anthony's alluded to. So fundamentally, this ability to see inside buildings or extract insight about what's going on inside buildings. One way of thinking about this is today, with all of the other satellites that are going up, capturing other data sets and looking down at the Earth, you're really looking at a black box typically. You can't really see what's going on inside it, particularly if you're thinking about a man-made structure or a building. So unlocking that box and being able to look inside really is a compelling value proposition, and is one that, for all the reasons we've been talking about, really is quite distinct to satellite view. The only other companies that have put up satellites that are capturing infrared data in the same wavelengths as satellite view, these have typically been very, very large, very expensive government satellites that simply don't offer the same value proposition in terms of revisit or indeed of fidelity of image capturing. So I do think that just fundamentally the nature of the information and insights that business is able to capture and extract are really quite profoundly different from anything else that is out there today. And I think provides the business with really exciting trajectory to become both a very large business, but also really impactful one at the same time.
Great, thank you. Anthony, what are Satellite View's biggest achievements today? What are you personally most proud of?
Well, we built a fantastic team. Really just 3 founders up to a team of over 40, and to deliver the first satellite, to see that satellite going out was just such a relief. The fact that it's got there safely and is being bolted to the rocket is an amazing achievement in 3.5 years. In a way, that's only half the story, the launch. What we're doing with the data, the way we're making it available to the customers, and all the exciting applications that we have in coming along is fantastic. And I think it really spurs the team on greatly. Secondly, it's got to be the investors, because they believed in us. They made this all happen. They gave us the oil to run the engine. And so it's been a fantastic support from the investors from the get-go.
Thank you. How do you define success for yourself and for the company?
Success can be the launch, success can be a product, but I think what really defines success is when the customers want to buy the product and they want to buy more of it. That really is fulfilling to see this whole cycle. So yes, and then meaningfully scaling that so it can be easily consumed as well. So we're producing data initially to specialists that know something about satellite data. But when we get that data into an insight that can maybe be an app on everyone's phone and they're using it without even knowing they're using it, that'll be real success for us.
And what about milestones? You mentioned the launch next month, but what's coming up for Satellite View?
Yeah, the launch, and then obviously start a commercial service is like a few months after that. We're innovating on new applications. There's some super exciting applications we're going to unveil. We want to scale the business, so one satellite is not enough. So if you want the frequent revisits, which the customers do, we need to order some more satellites and then just repeat the process again and again and again.
And what about profit? When will you get what investors want to know? When will you eventually manage to get Satellite View into profit?
So we show even with one satellite that we can break even, and there's that inflection point where we can break even. So we're in a good place. And economies of scale kick in. You don't need that many more people or facilities. So the more satellites we build, the more profitable we'll become. But we think, a couple of years after the launch of the second satellite, we'll be at the profit.
And how can our listeners help support Satellite View on your mission?
Well, we're always looking for good talent and enthusiastic people, and we're in this growth stage. So all sorts of walks of life are welcome to apply, and we have a talented individuals link on our website. So we'll be interested in hearing from anybody. If you are a partner or interested in the data, we want to build partnerships with people to add value to the data, and of course to the investors, because we need more investment to launch the ultimately the constellation. So we're looking for like-minded investors who want to come aboard.
Thank you. And finally, I'm sure if people are following your company, they'll have read in the news that you flew your thermometer over Leeds and it was to great success. Can you tell everyone a little bit more about that mission and what that means for right now?
Yes, we've had a copy of the camera that's going into space on an aeroplane for over 2 years now. And we've been flying over 5 countries, including the US. And we've been collecting imagery of things that we think that customers might be interested in. So industrial plants, cities, looking for hotspots, looking at pollution, nuclear power stations. We got on our database at least 6,000 images of different features. So really interesting data set. It gets people used to the data and how it's going to be delivered, and they can start thinking about what insights they want to derive. So this one over Leeds was sponsored by a charity and the council there, and they were very much looking at helping to save energy, so for fuel bills, and also the carbon footprint that would be associated with that. The same technology was flying over the industrial areas of Leeds. So we could look at commercial buildings, we could look at factories and where energy might need to be recycled. A lot of industrial processes just dump the excess energy into water or into the air, and maybe that can be recycled for local purposes. And then also that activity can be used for commodity trading, etc. And also, if that factory happens to be in China or the Far East, you don't know the carbon footprint of that. So we're looking for the leads in China and trying to make sure that they're being as green as the leads in the UK. So there's a full picture to be gathered from our data.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you for sharing that. At SatVu, we like to back visionary founders. What's your vision for the future when SatVu becomes a success?
We'd like to be a provider of information that can make a real difference to net zero, sustainability, and the quality of life. So, for example, if I want to go on a diet, I go to the supermarket and take a can of soup, and I can know exactly how many calories in there. Whereas I don't know the carbon impact of that can of soup. The globe needs to go on a carbon diet, and we don't have the information to make a change. So if that information were readily available on an app on your phone, and you wanted to make decisions of which supermarket to go to, or which product to buy, or where to work, or where to live, if that information were available at a granular scale, that I knew if I brought this product, it was sourced in China or the Far East, and they were a green factory, and we were monitoring the pollution that was coming from those plants, or the headquarters of this conglomerate in the UK somewhere had a portfolio of buildings that were energy efficient. I think having that information in very readable format would make a huge difference. If you don't measure things, you can't change things, you can't report, you can't hold people accountable. And having that information is paramount for keeping the planet safe.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you. Let's end there. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for empowering everyone on the planet. We can't wait to see what happens in the future.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are SatVu.